Ah, the Olympics. Nothing quite captures the imagination like the sights and sounds of the Olympic Games. And if you're a fan of these iconic worldwide competitions, and let's face it, how could you not be, then you know that the games move from city to city. But what happens to all the stadiums, the courts, the bleachers, and everything when the games are done? After all, cities spend a fortune getting all tuned up. Case in point, the 2014 Sochi Winter Games cost an estimated $50 billion. So what happens to all these leftover buildings? It's time to find out as we explore these abandoned Olympic buildings around the world. The Olympics are huge. Countries invest billions of dollars when it is their turn to host these legendary games. But who can blame them? In 2016, an estimated 3.2 billion viewers tuned in to watch the Rio de Janeiro Summer Games. And if you think advertisers aren't interested in that kind of viewership, well, you're wrong. At the 2018 Winter Games, NBC received $900 million in ad revenue alone. Yeah, advertisers ain't joking around here. With all this exposure, the host cities can earn billions of dollars themselves, be it from tourists that flock to see the best in the world compete, or from the future tourists that will one day visit the city. So basically, the thought is spend the money now so the city can look as desirable as possible, and then up tourism in the long run. Not a bad plan, guys. Well done. This is why an absurd amount of money is spent on new equipment, new stadiums, new monuments, new everything. Take the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympics. This city spent an eye-watering $12.9 billion on getting everything in tip-top shape for the games. NBC made sure that they had exclusive rights to air these games, and all games up to the year 2020, by spending $4.4 billion. They then spent an additional $7.65 billion to keep the rights until 2032. But now we come to the tragic part of the story, which unfortunately is a common tale between many of the cities that YOLO and go all in on the Olympics. The stadiums are never used again. Monuments, bleachers, food courts, and more all are left to rot and rust. And these buildings are all over. So let's take a little tour of these once majestic structures, shall we? Heading down south, our first stop is Atlanta, where the 1996 Olympic Games was held. Back in '96, the Big Peach spent a whopping $1.7 billion getting everything ready. When it was all said and done, the Metro Atlanta Chamber of Commerce assessed that the games generated $5.14 billion. We gotta say, that was a good investment, Atlanta. But unfortunately, many of the shiny new structures are now abandoned. Take a look at Olympic Cauldron, slowly crumbling away. Or what about the tower at Lake Lanier Olympic Park, which currently could use a makeover? Even old and unkempt tennis courts can be seen at Stone Mountain Tennis Center. Weeds, a broken scoreboard, and some tattered old nets are all that's left of the venue that once housed some of the best players in the world. Fly across the world to Berlin, Germany, where the 1936 games were held, and where Germany spent 16.5 million marks to get everything up to snuff. And you'll find some striking similarities to Atlanta, Georgia. Decaying buildings in the Olympic Village have been abandoned for years. Old and extremely water-damaged housing units for the athletes are still standing, but no one dares go inside. And check out this abandoned pool where the best swimmers in the world once competed. All of it is in shambles and unused. A real shame, if you ask us. Let's see what has been happening to all of the Olympic buildings once used in London. We can tell you, at $14.8 billion spent, London spared no expense in getting ready to house these tournaments. But head over to Stratford in London, and you'll see the abandoned remains of the 2012 Olympic Games. Derelict buildings that are fenced off are a common sight. And take a stroll down the RAF personnel housing units, where over 2,000 Olympians stayed during the 1948 Olympic competitions, and you'll see just how unused and run down the facility has become. Vandalism is prevalent all over this Olympic building in East London, with graffiti on nearly every exposed inch of concrete. If you're thinking that's all the abandoned Olympic buildings in the world, you are very wrong, my friend. The Beijing Summer Olympics in 2008 were a pretty costly investment for China at $3.6 billion. but they were absolutely some of the most beautiful and impressive games ever seen. It's too bad what's become of the buildings today. Check out this old beach volleyball court, and due to it being unmaintained for years, it looks like no one will be playing here anytime soon. Not too far away is the kayaking facility used exclusively for the kayaking competitions. We gotta say, this one was a pretty niche investment. But it's not just tournament facilities that are left abandoned. Here in Beijing, 5 massive mascots were constructed to create as much hype as possible. But years later, 2 of these mascots, Nini and Ying Ying, have been left face down in the mud to slowly rot. It's a shame too. They really are cool. But maybe this one's understandable, because like, what can you do with them after the games are done? The 2004 games were held in none other than Athens, and they were truly a wonder to behold. At $15 billion, this was one of the most expensive games in history. But as time rolled on, the games have done more harm than good. Increased traffic and flooding are just 2 of the consequences of these leftover remnants, and citizens are taking notice and are not happy. To quote Stelios Thanalis, a pensioner who lives nearby, "I used to think the Olympics were worth it. Now I don't. The venues aren't being used, and nothing has been done." And he's right. One look at this softball facility in Athens and you'll see exactly what he's talking about. Completely abandoned and unused, it's become more of an eyesore than anything else in the area. Abandoned seats in the bleachers used for an Olympic-sized swimming pool haven't been used in literal years. And here is an old fountain that is now covered in graffiti, located in the Olympic Village in northern Athens. Athens also has abandoned baseball stands at the Helliniko Olympic Complex in Athens, Greece. Unfortunately, it looks like nothing is going to change anytime soon either. Russia also houses some of these abandoned sport complexes. In 2014, they housed the Sochi Winter Olympics and spent $50 billion. As you can imagine, some of those brand spanking new facilities have now gone to waste. And here, you can see the remnants of an Olympic Central Stadium, unused and a shell of its former self. The Sarajevo 1984 Winter Olympics were one for the books, and back then, an impressive $110,900,000 was spent by the city to get ready. But check out the once majestic bobsled track. Not so pretty anymore, huh? And here is an old ski jump that you won't catch us going down anytime soon. After all, it's mostly crumbling rubble at this point. Wait, who are we kidding? We wouldn't have had the guts to go down this thing if it was new. Anyways, moving on. Next up, we find ourselves in beautiful Italy, in the city of Turin. It's a town usually known for its incredible food and beautiful architecture. But in 2006, it was known as the location of the Winter Olympics. What was the price tag Turin had to cover so that they could host? $700 million. But for as beautiful as the games were, take a look at what has been left to ruins afterwards. Here is an Olympic village that was built for the athletes, only now we'd say it looks a bit more like a ghost town. To round things up on our list, we want to leave you with what is left of the Rio de Janeiro Games that took place in 2016. $13.1 billion was spent here. And while it may have been impressive at the time, here's what it looks like now. Maracana Stadium has been left to ruins, with seats literally falling apart. The Olympic Aquatic Stadium hasn't fared much better, mainly due to no one using it in years. Here's Olympic Park, and we gotta say, it ain't much of a park anymore. More like a landfill, and it's a shame too. It really was something else when it was first built. So, while the Olympics are a time of spectacle, of wonder, and of course competition at the highest level, they also seem to be a sort of flash in the pan for many of these cities around the globe. Sure, some cities managed to turn their now unused Olympic gyms into something else. Case in point, the 35,000-seat Pyeongchang Olympic Stadium, which cost $60 million to build, will be repurposed into a 5,000 to 10,000-seat venue that doubles as a history museum to these legendary games. But it seems for the majority of these once majestic venues, their fate is to be left to rot. Sadly, it doesn't look like things are going to change anytime soon. The Olympics, after all, are a worldwide tradition that brings us together. If a few old stadiums are left abandoned, well, that seems to be just the way things are. Hey, thanks for tuning in today. If you enjoyed today's video, go ahead and hit that like button. It really helps us out here a lot, and it helps us to continue to make the content that you crave. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing so you can see the next time one of our videos goes up all about the wealthy and the well-off. We will see you next time, right here on The Richest.